I have one request to every Indian. Can we change the mentality towards our women in everyday life? Prime Minister Narendra Modi said in an address on the 75th anniversary of India's independence, "It is important that in our speech and conduct we do nothing that lowers the dignity of women." Just hours after the Indian Prime Minister gave this speech asking citizens to respect women, 11 men were released from an Indian prison and were given a hero's welcome with garlands and celebrations. The men were serving life sentences for rape and murder. The release was approved by the Prime Minister. In 2002, 60 Hindu pilgrims died in a fire on a passenger train in Godhra town in the northwestern Gujarat state of India. Blaming Muslims for starting the fire, Hindu mobs went on a rampage, attacking Muslim neighborhoods. Bilkis Bano, just 19 years old at the time, had gone to visit her parents with her 3-year-old daughter. She was 5 months pregnant with her second child. They were in a village called Radikpur, close to Godhra. I was in the kitchen making lunch and my aunt and her children came running. They said that their homes had been set on fire and that we had to leave immediately. We left with just the clothes that we were wearing. We didn't even have time to put on any footwear. 17 members of Bilkis's family, including her 3-year-old daughter, elderly mother, pregnant cousin, siblings, nieces and nephews, fled in search of safety. They travelled from village to village seeking shelter in mosques and on the goodwill of peaceful citizens. On the morning of the 3rd of March, as they set out to go to a nearby village where they believed they would be safer, Bilkis and her family had reached the Chaparvad district, where a group of 20 to 30 men stopped them. Neighbours, men Bilkis saw almost every day growing up. The mob attacked Bilkis and her family with sickles, swords and stones. 11 of them gang raped Bilkis, her mother, her cousin who had just given birth, and 3 other women. They attacked us with swords and sticks. One of them snatched my daughter from my lap and threw her on the ground, bashing her head into a rock. Her cousin, who had just delivered a baby 2 days earlier, whilst they were on the run, was raped and murdered, and her newborn was killed. Bilkis lost consciousness, and her attackers left believing that she was dead. Bilkis and 2 boys, aged 7 and 4, were the only survivors. The attack on Bilkis Bano and her family was one of the most horrific crimes during the riots. More than 1,000 people died, most of them Muslims. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the Chief Minister of Gujarat at the time. He was criticised for not doing enough to prevent the carnage. He has always denied wrongdoing and has not apologised for the riots. Local police did nothing. Bilkis turned to the National Human Rights Commission in 2003 and eventually they filed an appeal in the Supreme Court. The first arrests in the case were made in 2004 after India's Supreme Court handed over the case to federal investigators. The trial was transferred from Ahmedabad in Gujarat to Mumbai over fears of evidence tampering. 13 individuals in the case were convicted on charges of rape, murder and conspiracy, out of which 11 were given life sentences. After several attempts to overturn the judgment and CBI pushing for the death penalty, the High Court upheld its previous order of life sentences for 11 convicts in 2017. On August 15, 2022, the Gujarat government released all 11 convicts, causing public outrage. Days after her attackers were freed, Bilkis Bano issued a statement calling the decision to free the men unjust and said it had shaken her faith in justice. When I heard that the convicts who had devastated my family and life had walked free, I was bereft for words. I'm still numb, she said. How can justice for any woman end like this? I trusted the highest courts of our land. I trusted the system, and I was learning slowly to live with my trauma. The release of these convicts has taken from me my peace and shaken my faith in justice. she appealed to the Gujarat government to undo this harm and give me back my right to live without fear and in peace. We still can't go home because we're afraid. Police and the state administration have always helped the attackers. When we are in Gujarat, we still cover our faces. We never give out our address. Bilkis said she's not interested in revenge and she just wants them to understand what they've done. I hope that they one day realize the enormity of their crime, how they killed small children and raped women. She added that she wanted them to spend their entire lives in jail. If you are welcoming these rapists back into our society, what will happen to this country's women? On the 8th of January 2024, the Supreme Court decided to dismiss the remission of the convicts, ordering them to surrender to the authorities in 2 weeks. Bilkis said that she had wept tears of relief on hearing that the decision to free her attackers had been overturned. She thanked the Supreme Court for giving me and my children and women everywhere the vindication and hope in the promise of equal justice for all.